We talk LA Kings as they make a push towards the playoffs with Connor Doyle of the Hockey News on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, the LA Kings return to action on Thursday in Chicago against the pesky Blackhawks. LA looking to close out this mini two-game road trip with a win after losing the first game of the trip on Monday 3-1 in Minnesota. Joining us to talk about the Kings as we head down the home stretch and into the playoffs is Connor Doyle. He is co-editor of the Hockey News covering the LA Kings. You can follow him on X and Twitter at Lords of the Rinks and check out his work at thehockeynews.com. Hey, Connor, good to have you with us. How you doing?
Absolutely ecstatic. Big supporter of this show. Eddie's been doing a great job for years now. I've been checking in and happy to be on.
Well, that is a great start. Sucking up the host is always a good move. No, but thank you very much. Appreciate that. Before we get started, this is your first time joining us, so I do want to ask you to kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Are you from Southern California originally? Did you grow up a Kings fan? And how did you kind of get into hockey and covering the Kings?
Yeah, no, all great questions. Grew up in Torrance, South Bay area. Grew up a big Kings fan, Sparks, Dodgers, Lakers, every sport in LA. Realistically, was blessed to have one of my parents work for Comerica Bank, and they sponsor what used to be Staples Center, and just got free tickets all the time. Was very fortunate and go see these teams live, and fell in love with the Kings, even in the Rod Blake and Ziggy Palffy era, and it just transformed into me getting into my, adult years into actually creating a social media and tweeting and, staying up with the team, watching every game. And that passion turned into, I want to be more connected. And the Kings, their PR opened up the books, so they say, to having outside media. And for about 3 seasons now, I've kind of navigated becoming, official press and media working the Kings. Seen you there for the last few seasons, and it's just become a dream come true, and you feel really in tune and connected to your community in terms of the sports network.
I see you're wearing a UCLA hat. Are you a Bruin?
Sure am.
All right. Excited about some college basketball, I guess, coming up here?
Yeah, I think you're always excited when your team is always kind of like in the periphery. I haven't really kept up with them as much as I have in the last few seasons, but it's always nice when you have a school that's always kind of in the periphery, always in the talk to be, contending or competing, right?
Yeah, for sure. I have not filled out my bracket yet, but I'm sure I will do that at some point. Because everybody, you got to do that. And my college basketball knowledge has dropped off significantly than when I was a younger man. But still, it's still fun. Still always fun to do.
Absolutely.
So I know you wrote recently for the Hockey News about the Kings' road issues, and it's pretty baffling when you consider how amazing they've been at home. Their home winning percentage is the best in the NHL, but among teams that are in the playoff spot, I believe they have the worst road record, or certainly right there. I've asked this to a lot of people, so if you don't have an answer, don't worry about it. But any theories as to why it has been such a dramatic difference for the Kings this year at home as to on the road?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give like such a simple answer, but I think it comes down to how they utilize matchups. And you'd think a team that dominates matchups at home would be able to carry that over on the road. Well, they haven't, right? The 2 top road scorers for the Kings are Kopitar and Kempe. And after that, it's a significant drop-off. I had to do a little bit of research on this, but the next 2 scorers after Kopitar and Kempe are not Fiala. It's not QB. It's Turcotte and Lafayette. Turcotte has 2/3 of his points on the road. He has scored every single one of his goals on the road this year. There's a significant drop-off of their top players. Fiala only has 11 points, I believe, on the road, which is like good for 175th in the league. but out of those 11 points, it's like 8 goals. So you're kind of left in this situation where their power play doesn't drop off. I mean, it does drop off to 13% on the road, but their PK is pretty stagnant. It's still, I believe, at 81% on the road. So that 5-on-5 is really what comes into question here. And I think with their grueling style of hockey, it can come down to a lot of theories. I just had this talk with another one of our staff at the Hockey News that, like, is this potentially a leadership problem? Because it doesn't seem like they get going for these games on the road as much as maybe against like Vegas when they pay them on the road and won 6-5, right? They beat Winnipeg in OT in their barn. I mean, you've seen the Kings play great games on the road, but there's a significant drop off in maybe motivation, or maybe it's just the way they play a grueling style of hockey and it's this late and you go on the road and they shut that switch off, which is kind of disappointing because 9 times this year they've been blown out by 3 goals or more on the road. I don't know where that ranks across the league. I can tell you that if that's 10% of your games that you play all year and they're all on the road, that's amplified. It's not good. So I don't really have an answer to that. I wish I did, but I would point towards that secondary scoring that drops off after Kopitar and Kempe on the road. I mean, if your number 3 and 4 of scoring on the road is your 2 of your younger guys on the squad, good for them. But at the same time, where's your secondary scoring?
You mentioned special teams. It's been equally head scratching. Usually, the power penalty kill is usually reliable and does a good job. But of course, the power play has been an issue all season long, and it hasn't gotten any better at all. Mm-hmm. They add Andrei Kuzmenko at the deadline to try and help specifically with the power play. Have you noticed the power play being any better at all of late since the trade deadline?
Yeah, I mean, it's right at 20%. I believe they're 3 for their last 15, right? So, I mean, if you want to look at a 5% bump, I'm going to take that when your power play has been operating around 15% all year or less. A 20%, that little bit of a bump, I think it's better. I mean, Eddie, we've seen the last few seasons of having a Gabe Vilardi and a Victor Arvidsson, working down low as a right-handed shot. They needed that. It doesn't go against anything, against Alex Laferriere. But having a guy like Kuzmenko who has those soft touches, who has those plays where he can twist out in front and make a play, I think it does affect the way that other opposing PKs have to work on that schematic. I think they've moved the puck really well. This is a team, though, that gets zone entries really well on the power play. And then once they set up, it's like someone needs to shoot. someone needs to shoot. And so I think there still kind of is this inability to take that shot. I mean, we saw a great one by Kempe, and I think that was that, quick and little sauce pass across the crease there, back door. I mean, you got to shoot on that. But for the most part, they've really remained on the perimeter. But just to get back to, answering your questions, just they have looked sharper with Kuzmenko, and just in general, they've just been a really good team with that addition.
Well, the Kings just had a 5-game winning streak snapped with that loss in Minnesota. The 5-game winning streak included a great win over the Capitals, but there was also a 1-0 overtime win against a bad Predators team. And then they had that weird game against the Islanders where they had 2 goals against wiped away on goalie interference. They were New York was 0 for 8 on the power play. So how do you feel the Kings are playing right now as we head down this stretch run into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, a little troubling because, and it's a little confusing, right? Because they just, you rattle up 5 wins, but like you said, the Nashville game didn't, leave you any room for, wow, like this team is really on track. And even in the Islander game, they gave up a ton of rush and odd man opportunities. The one goal they did score was Anders Lee. It was off of a rush goal. And that game was just tough to watch. I know I got a lot of flack on social media for being negative about it, but it was just the Kings were winning these ugly games where it's a good thing that good teams can win games playing their C+, B- games, but there's no longevity in that. It's good to see that, but at the same time, you're seeing this kind of like concerning level play from the Kings where they just kind of, look disinterested almost for 40 plus minutes of the game. And that's not a good formula to win hockey games, Eddie. And, but you also seen the drop off in the Byfield, Fiala, and Lafayette line, right? Like they were carrying the Kings offensively. And when they start to dry out, the Kings team offensively will dry out. After the Nashville game, where are we at in goals? We've only scored 1 5-on-5 goal, with that entire period. And that was not even a 5-on-5, it was a 3-on-3, right? So the Kings offense is now getting to that point, the fluctuation it has every 2 weeks, it seems like with this team, where the offense kind of goes stagnant because realistically, they really only have 1, maybe 2 lines going at one time the whole season. You can go back to the New York trip when Turcotte was put up with Kopitar. That line was starting to go as the Fogle, Tanner Jeannot, and Byfield line was going. So at times there's been two lines going, but right now you don't really have a line that's finding the back of the net consistently.
We're just getting started with Connor Doyle of the Hockey News. Up next, we'll talk about some of the individual players this season for the Kings a little bit more in depth. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. There's nothing like watching basketball live, the energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. And if you want to catch all of the action in person, then you need to do what I do, and that is use Gametime to get your tickets. And it is easier than ever. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. It filters out the fluff, shows you only the best deals on great seats so you don't have to waste your time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Gametime Picks has highlighted super deals for you, giving you the best bang for your buck with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and the lowest price guaranteed. You can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, and you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check out your finances, track spending, and even long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we are continuing with Connor Doyle of the Hockey News. You can check out his work at thehockeynews.com. Connor, let's talk about some of the players, get into it more specifically, and let's start with the guy between the pipes, Darcy Kuemper, your reigning number one star of the week in the NHL. What were your expectations for Kuemper coming into this season, and how has he met or exceeded those expectations?
Yeah, I think there was a pretty much a higher level of expectation, because you see that LA has been a goalie haven going back to last year with the bold move they made for Cam Talbot. If you wanted to define that as bold, I think it was, low risk, high reward. He was a budget goaltender last year and became an all-star. I thought the same thing. I had the same expectations of Kuemper, who he was replaced. Was it Charlie Lindgren in Washington? So he was replaced after, a season and a half, 2 seasons. He became really the backup and had really poor numbers, had really poor low quality, medium chance, save percentage. It wasn't good in Washington, but coming over to a goalie haven, I had pretty decently high expectations. But I think, I don't want to speak for you, Eddie, but I think he's broken through anyone's expectations.
I agree.
I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I think he has stole games for the Kings this year. They haven't had that in a while. Even going back to Talbot. Talbot was not stealing games for the Kings last year. He was just good enough to keep them in it. But I think Kuemper, going back to the first game of the year, Kopitar's hat trick was the reigning talk of the title of that game, but they don't win that game without Kuemper. Kuemper stole that game. He's been keeping the Kings in games of late, and he's looked excellent. He should. I know Dooley wrote about it recently, Zach Dooley, the LA Kings insider, but this is a guy that should be at least in the talks for the Vezina. He should be a finalist. I think if he finishes the year continuing at this pace, I know it's hard to maintain that, but he should absolutely be in the top 3 for the voting. I mean, it is Hellebuck's year to lose, and he's certainly not going to lose, in my opinion, but he should be a finalist this year. He's been excellent. He's kind of a classic, uses his momentum and maximizes his moves very strategically. He's a great goalie, and as much as we haven't had a goalie that likes to play the puck a lot, he does a lot more than Riddick. But he's just been absolutely excellent.
Obviously, a ton of excitement over Quentin Byfield, certainly of late. Even got some talk around the league with his 6 goals in 6 games, which is understandable. Mm-hmm. Certainly a guy that gets a lot of comments on social media, as you know, some frustration over him not being farther along necessarily in his career, or, him being able to finish more. We've certainly seen a lot of that lately. But I think most people I've talked to on this show have always felt like eventually it's going to happen. Maybe it hasn't happened as soon as some fans would like, but that Quentin Byfield eventually will turn into at least a good NHL player if he isn't there already. But over this last stretch, we certainly have had our appetites whetted with how exciting and potentially a game-breaking player he can be.
Mhm.
So what we've seen of late from him is that should be the expectation going forward. Not that he's going to score 6 goals in 6 games, but that he can be that kind of player for the LA Kings.
Yeah, that would be that would definitely be the expectation of Q. The only issue is that I think sometimes we forget he's 22. He's still lacking that game-to-game consistency. But when you are provided this opportunity to play as really the team's number one center, since I believe since the trade deadline, he has played more minutes 5-on-5 than Kopitar and Danault. You're looking at a guy that is getting the reins now after a season of being on the top line, about a season and a half, going back to now 2 seasons. He's a guy that's ready and he's bursting onto the scene. He moves like a small forward. He's shifty, but yet he's 6'5", and he's got that speed. And you expect with that package to just put it all together and do it night to night. But I guess I'm one of the few writers that is not as hard on Q, just because he's 22. I mean, yes, he should have been, development wise, maybe a little bit more ahead, but with him, sometimes you grade he's 22 and that it's hard to consistently put these games together. I mean, Kempe was 25, 26 until it started coming together. Everyone has their own development curve. What we're seeing right now from Q is fantastic. He's out on the PK. He's out looking great on the power play. You're starting to see this kind of switch from 11 to 55 in terms of like leading this team. And that line over this last stretch has carried this team. And that's a big factor on 55. I mean, Q has been really the go-to guy on this team with Fiala and that combination that we so talked about. I think on one of your shows, we talked about it in the preseason, that 55 and 22 is going to be the next big thing. Well, didn't happen. Just had to happen over time. And now that it is, you're looking for Q to be the go-to guy every night. I think there's some leeway there with him being 22, but he has the opportunity to be that go-to guy every night. And it's kind of nice to see him putting it all together, Eddie.
For sure. As for Kevin Fiala, number 22, he can be a frustrating player at times, but it's also because we see the high-end talent, right, that he has at times as well. Was a minus 11 over the first 3 months of the season. He's turned that around. He's a +2 over the last 3 months. Mm-hmm. Seems certainly to be heading in the right direction. How are you feeling about Fiala's game as we head towards the playoffs?
I think he's looked like a $7.8 million player. I think he's looking like the player they signed him for. And I know a few people on Twitter were saying that, especially playing Minnesota, like, don't let people tell you we lost the Brock Faber trade. When he plays like how he's been playing, you absolutely look at him like, yeah, we'll take the player for what he is, and he's a steal. But that first half, like you said, Eddie, was pretty rough. We are still gonna. It is Kevin. Kevin will be Kevin, and we'll take his aggressive or his upset penalty here and there. But when he's on, I mean, hard to knock off the puck, makes plays. His passes are most players' shots. He's been great in the second half, and I think Hiller touched on that. They expected big things from Kevin in the second half, and really he's come to play, and that chemistry that's forming with Q has just been that great third option. If you talk about the duos, 11-9, 22-12, or 24-12, now 55-22, that gives them 3 duos to throw out there, and you can mix around with the other winger. That makes the Kings a viable threat out west.
And Brandt Clarke's another player that people have been concerned about because of the lack of playing time. But since the deadline, he's been in the lineup every game since. I thought he had a nice game against Minnesota, a couple of real nice offensive chances. Your thoughts on what is essentially the rookie season for Brandt Clarke?
It's ups and downs, right? I think it's marked by, the first 2 months he was almost leading all defensemen in points in October, midway through November. But then you have a player that had 22 max games to his career going into this season. You saw that drop off. In play. He was still hanging in there. I think he has the best escapability on the back end with Jordan Spence. Still plays well. Hard to defend one-on-one at his age, especially with his lack of skating ability. And then the Drew Doughty comes back from injury, and that really changes, going from 18 to 20 minutes a night. Now you're back into like the 10 to 14 range. Eddie, I've said this like a ton on some other podcasts, but when you make one mistake in 10 shifts, if you're given 10 shifts, that is way more exposure, way more visibility on that mistake if it's one mistake in 20. He's going to make mistakes at this age. So his season would be kind of, very much a high peak to start the year. And then he valleyed out. Did think he had a great game versus Minnesota. And I do want to give him credit for, busting it out and getting a stretch pass and OT the other night to set up the Byfield goal. That was a gutsy play. And those are the plays that he's going to make as a young player. And I think that the sky is the limit for him. As much as we're still in the now, Eddie, I mean, going back to Q and Clark, I mean, the Kings really do have a good foundation, especially next year, for those two players to take the next step. But Clark's been good. He's just peaks and valleys of his player, his age, and Drew Doughty coming back. You're not going to be the number one guy in LA.
How do you feel about the current lineup that we've seen since the deadline? The 12-6, Kuzmenko on the Kopitar line, Turcotte, Hellenius on the fourth line, and then the defensive pairings, Doughty back in the top pairing, Gavrikov the second with Clark, and then Edmondson on the third pairing.
I think it's been great. And I know Kings Twitter will absolutely, love this that I say this, but they're 13-3-2 without Trevor Lewis. That doesn't go to a player that only plays 10 minutes a night. I get that argument, but that whole configuration, dropping Turcotte down to the fourth line to work with speed with two gigantic. I mean, Eddie, I'm sure you've seen Hellenius after some of these games. That is a big human being. Same with Janot. Playing with those two guys, having that extra gear and that work ethic with Turcotte, that fourth line has been great. The lineup, I think the only tweak that you may see, just because the offense, like we talked about, is kind of drying up, is, we'd like, I'm saying we, the royal we, but probably would want to see Kuzmenko with 22 and 55. Potentially even seeing him work his way around the lineup to get the offense going and get him going. I mean, he's looked good, but the points have not come. So trying to see if maybe you can get some more speed on Kopitar's wing. Kopitar looked a little slow the last couple games. I mean, they got absolutely cratered against Minnesota analytically. I'd like to see Kuzmenko move around the lineup. But other than that, I would have Drew Doughty probably playing less minutes, but everything is probably going to be in sync come mid-April. I think this is probably the lines you're going to see in April. Maybe you'll see Lewis come back for a game or two, depending on how the Kings are doing. But this is pretty much the lineup that I'd be walking into, April 17th or April 18th, going into the playoffs with, for sure.
All right, we're going to talk playoffs with Connor Doyle of the Hockey News next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who is delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, you'll have multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork finds affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That is Upwork.com, UPWORK.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, we are wrapping it up with Connor Doyle of the Hockey News. Connor, we know the Kings are going to make the postseason. According to moneypuck.com, 99.4% chance of making the playoffs.
Pretty good.
We know who they're likely going to play, right? It's either going to be Vegas or Edmonton. What we don't know is where that first-round series is going to start. Vegas, 86 points, just 2 points up on Edmonton, who has 84. And the Kings are just 3 points back of the Oilers. LA with a game in hand on Vegas, 2 on Edmonton, and the 2 head-to-head matchups against the Oilers are obviously going to be huge. 16 games left for the Kings, 11 on home ice. When it's all said and done, how do you see this thing shaking out?
Call it me being pessimistic, but I think the Kings could get second. It would be great. I think they were in prime position to compete for first. I do think that game against Minnesota was kind of a step back. I know Money Puck had that game ranked as a not much to lose for the Kings, but I think they really needed to gain traction on Vegas, because I believe Vegas and Edmonton are both in the bottom of the league in terms of strength of schedule left. They have a pretty easy, both of them. I think the Kings are ranked like 16th in the league in terms of strength of schedule, even if they do have it at home. I think they'll finish second. I think that will put them in a really good position to actually win a first round against one of these two clubs. But they're going to have to take care of business. And like you said, 2 games in April. Those 2 games are going to be huge against Edmonton. One at home and one they're going to play Edmonton, but Edmonton will be coming off a back-to-back against Winnipeg. So, yeah, I think after it all shakes out, they'll be potentially playing Edmonton at home with home ice advantage, which could be huge.
Yeah, I know the Kings do have the toughest schedule. I wonder if, though, that isn't necessarily a bad thing for the Kings, because it seems like they play well against the better teams in the league, and against some of the lesser teams, not so much. So maybe in the end that actually works out in their favor.
It's true.
What do you think about the current playoff format, by the way? I know the GM meetings are going on in the NHL. Mm-hmm. There's been discussion amongst maybe going back to the 1-8. I know Gary Bettman is dead set against that, although he may not be commissioner too much longer. But what do you think about that? What do you think about this potential of seeing Edmonton, LA for a 4th year in a row?
Yeah, so to start off, I know Elliot Friedman Pierre LeBrun mentioned it this morning that he asked the Commissioner Bettman, and he shot it down this morning. So I don't like the format. I think having these teams clash like this, like Colorado and in Dallas around one. I mean, we're talking about 2 favorites duking it out in round 1. I definitely don't like the format, but if it's going to stay the same, it's still good. It's still quality television. It's still quality marketing for the sport. A 4th year of Edmonton and LA, though, I think this year is finally the year that I could say that it would slightly favor LA. I could go into a lot of details about that. I feel that Edmonton is the thinnest they've been in their forward group. You're seeing this huge upheaval of Draisaitl and McDavid having to carry that team more than they have in the past. You've seen a huge drop-off in production of Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. That Arvidsson pickup for them didn't really age well for them. Same with the Skinner pickup. And then obviously the offer sheet still in Holloway and Broberg. This is a team that kind of not gutted, but took away players from their championship run or to the finals roster. So I think if the Kings have home ice advantage and they're playing Oilers for a 4th straight season, I think they have not a clear cut advantage, but I think it's distinctual.
Yeah, Warren Fogle leaving them and coming to LA certainly has helped out a bit as well.
And think about it, Eddie. He's been not that this was part of the chat, but I think he's been this team's MVP this year. I mean, you're talking about the leader in 5-on-5 points for the Kings. Not Kopitar, not Kempe, not Fiala. Warren Fogle leads this team in 5-on-5 points. He's in the top 30 in the entire league, 5-on-5 points. I mean, they're not in the position they are without Warren Fogle. Talk about a perfect fit for this team.
I'll leave you with this, Connor. Kings win the first round playoff series. Does Rob Blake get an extension? And if they don't, is LA looking for a new GM at the end of the year?
This may sound conspiracy theorist-esque, but I think Rob Blake has already mentioned that he was on his way out with Elliot Friedman, that this was his last year regardless. And I think conspiracy theorists, I think they've already have Mark Bergevin waiting in the wings as the special assistant to the GM. I think that it's just an easy handoff while Luc Robitaille kind of is in the background also helping manage the team. So I think Rob Blake, unless they won the cup or maybe the conference finals, I don't see him coming back. I think he's just about tapped out in LA, and hopefully he can add a playoff series win to his belt before he does so.
Well, Mark Bergevin as the new GM of the Kings would certainly have a strong reaction from Kings Nation. That is for sure.
That is for sure.
We will see about that. But let's first things first. Let's see if we can get these Kings to win a playoff series and see where it goes from there. Connor, absolutely. Thank you for doing this. By the way, Connor Doyle, again, Hockey News. Follow him on X and Twitter at Lords of the Rinks. You can check out his work and his colleagues over at the Hockey News at thehockeynews.com. Connor, great to chat with you. Thank you for doing this. Looking forward to have you on again sometime. But thank you for this. This is great.
Absolute pleasure, Eddie. Go Kings.
All right. Thank you, Connor. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. For you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked On LA Kings every day, Thursday's show will be a recap of the Kings Blackhawks game shortly after its conclusion. I hope you'll join us for that. Also, we have our Kings fan feedback show on Friday as well. If you want us an email for that, it's lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube as well. We'd love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, listening and watching. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.